Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are digging into a set of sources that, well, they offer a pretty unconventional path, not just to success, but maybe to actual wisdom. And it's all through the lens of Charlie Munger.
Yeah, that's right. We're definitely not wading through the usual Wall Street jargon here.
No beta, no cap M.
Exactly. Forget that stuff. Munger's whole framework, it's rooted in something more like old-fashioned Midwestern values almost. Lifelong learning, trying to be objective, reliable, and really, really avoiding destructive things like envy.
It feels much more foundational. He talks about fundamental truth, human accomplishment, human foibles, and the arduous path to wisdom. It wasn't just smarts, was it? It was this structure.
Absolutely. And that structure, the core of it, is what he called the lattice work of knowledge.
Right, the lattice work. That's our mission today, trying to unpack that idea, this mental toolkit he built from, well, basically everywhere, every discipline.
Yeah, the lattice work is really the key concept.
Hmm.
Munger's point was you can't really use knowledge if it's just a bunch of isolated facts floating around in your head.
They need to connect somehow.
Precisely. They need to hang together on a lattice work of theory, or what he called mental models. Otherwise, the information just isn't usable. It's all about integrating the big ideas from different fields.
So if you're, say, an accountant, and you only think like an accountant, you're missing huge parts of the picture.
You got it. Which brings us back to that old saying, right? To a man with only a hammer, every problem looks pretty much like a nail.
Huh, yeah. And Munger put it even more bluntly.
He did. He said using just one or two models makes you like a chiropractor trying to fix everything with the same adjustment. You end up basically torturing reality to fit your limited tools.
Okay, so avoiding that mental trap means building this diverse toolkit. What are the non-negotiable models we need? Where do we even start? It sounds like a lot.
It does sound daunting, but he stressed focusing on the big fundamental ideas. So start with mathematics. Obvious, maybe, but crucial.
Beyond just basic sums.
Oh yeah, basic arithmetic is table stakes. But then, compound interest, he called it the eighth wonder of the world. And you absolutely need the basic math of permutations and combinations. Understanding probability is vital.
Makes sense for investing, definitely. But he also pushed into the hard sciences, right? How does knowing about engineering or physics help someone managing a business?
It's about thinking in terms of systems. Engineering gives you concepts like redundancy and backup systems, essential stuff.
Why essential?
Because things will fail. It's inevitable. So if you're smart, you design systems knowing that failure is coming and you plan for it. It forces you to be intellectually honest about risks.
Okay, redundancy, backups, what else?
And then there are these ideas like breakpoint, tipping moment, and autocatalysis. They describe how systems can suddenly shift, cross a threshold and behave completely differently.
Autocatalysis, that sounds
That's it.
chemical. Can you break that one down? How does that apply outside a lab?
Right? It comes from chemistry, where a reaction product speeds up the reaction itself. Munger's classic example was Disney. Think back to when the video cassette arrived.
Okay, VCRs, late 70s, early 80s.
Exactly.
Right.
Disney didn't invent the VCR. They didn't need to create tons of new movies right away. They just sat there with this massive library of animated classics they already owned.
The existing copyright.
The copyrights.
Yeah.
The VCR created this enormous new way to get those movies into homes. So that new channel, combined with their existing irreplaceable assets, the films created this massive, almost effortless surge in profits. Billions.
Wow.
That's autocatalysis in business. The existing asset plus the new technology just fed on each other, amplifying the result massively, like pouring gasoline on a fire they already had smoldering.
Incredible. Just sitting on assets until the right catalyst appears. Okay, so math, engineering models. What else is foundational?
Accounting. You absolutely have to understand it. It's the language of practical business life, as Munger called it.
But with a big but.
A huge but. You have to know its limitations. Accounting is just a crude approximation of economic reality. It's a tool, a useful one, but it's not the absolute truth.
And didn't he have that story about Carl Braun, the engineer?
Perfect example. Braun built oil refineries. He realized standard accounting metrics were, well, Munger said Braun called them asinine.
Asinine. Why?
Because they focused too much on short-term building costs and didn't properly measure the long-term efficiency and operating costs, which is what really mattered for the refinery's economics. So Braun literally tossed out his standard accountants.
He fired them.
Well, he had his engineers develop a new accounting system that actually tracked the true long-term economic reality of the refinery. The lesson is clear. Understand the limits of your tools or they'll limit you.
Okay, so we're building this lattice work. Math, engineering, accounting. Now, how do we use these tools effectively? This brings us to inversion, right?
Yes. Inversion might be the single most powerful mental trick Munger championed. Remember the mathematician Jacobi? Invert. Always invert.
Thinking backward.
Exactly. Instead of figuring out how to succeed, you figure out what guarantees failure, and then you just avoid that.
Like the old joke, I just want to know where I'm going to die so I'll never go there.
That's the one. Sounds simple, almost silly, but it's profound. It flips the problem.
So instead of how do I get rich?
Ask. What would absolutely guarantee I end up miserable and broke?
Okay, so what does guarantee misery according to Munger? He referenced Johnny Carson, didn't he?
He did. Carson apparently had a list. Ingest chemicals habitually, give in to envy, and nurse resentment. Avoid those like the plague, Munger advised, and you've already dodged the biggest pitfalls.
It forces you to play defense first. And that applies financially too, avoiding ruin.
Critically, learning to handle mistakes is key, but the real killer is often psychological denial. Refusing to accept you made a mistake, or sticking with a losing investment because you can't admit you were wrong. That denial is a fast path to going broke.
Which leads us straight into psychology. Munger thought this was ungodly important, even though it wasn't really taught seriously in business schools back then.
Ungodly important, yes. And there are so many crucial psychological tendencies, but let's focus on two big ones for now. First, back to envy and resentment.
We have to avoid them. Why was he so strong on envy?
Because, as he famously said, it's a really stupid sin. It's the only one you can't possibly have any fun doing.
Ouch. That's bleakly accurate. A lot of pain and no fun.
Right. Think about it. You just feel awful comparing yourself. You gain nothing and it warps your judgment. In today's world, endlessly scrolling social media, comparing your reality to someone else's highlight reel, that's pure envy fuel. Poison.
Definitely poison for good decision-making.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the second key psychological concept?
This one's huge in business and management. Incentive-caused bias.
Sometimes called the agency cost.
Exactly. The problem where the employees' or managers' incentives don't perfectly align with the owner's or the company's best interests. Munger believed the single most vital rule in management was just get the incentives right.
We assume people should just do their jobs properly, but incentives often drive behavior much more powerfully.
Absolutely. Remember the Federal Express story? They had this persistent problem with the night shift not sorting packages efficiently. Huge delays.
What do they try?
Everything. Threats, pleading, more supervisors. Nothing worked reliably. They were paying people by the hour.
Okay.
Then someone had the bright idea, stop paying by the hour, pay the whole shift a flat rate, and they can all go home only when every single package is sorted correctly.
So the incentive flipped completely.
Overnight, the problem vanished. Suddenly, the entire team was motivated to work together efficiently, help each other, even pressure the slower workers because everyone wanted to get done and go home. Their collective incentive aligned perfectly with the company's goal. That's the power of incentives.
That is a fantastic illustration. Okay, let's pivot slightly. How do we apply all this, the lattice work, inversion, psychology in practice, especially in investing? Let's talk about the circle of competence.
This is fundamental to the Munger and Buffett approach. The idea is simple. Only play in games where you have a demonstrable edge. You have to know what you know, and critically what you don't know.
So they sort things into basically 3 piles.
Pretty much. Yes, this is something we understand and can value. No, this is clearly not a good opportunity. And the biggest pile for most people. Too tough to understand. Just put it aside. Don't feel you have to have an opinion on everything.
Which is why they famously steered clear of, say, complex tech industries for a long time.
Right. They felt they didn't have a durable competitive advantage in understanding those rapidly changing fields. And the absolute key here is honesty. You have to know if you really understand something deeply or if you're just repeating what you've heard.
The Max Planck and his chauffeur story.
That's the perfect analogy. Planck, the Nobel physicist, toured giving the same lecture. His chauffeur heard it so many times he bragged he could give it himself.
And Planck let him try?
He did. The chauffeur delivered the lecture flawlessly. But then, during the Q&A, an expert asked a tough, probing question. The chauffeur was stumped. His response: "Well, I'm surprised that in such an advanced city as Munich, I'm asked such an elementary question. I'm going to ask my chauffeur, Professor Planck, to reply."
Huh? Brilliant. He had the script, but not the understanding.
Exactly. He had the chauffeur knowledge, not the Planck knowledge. The real, deep understanding built on that lattice work of models. Playing games where you only have chauffeur knowledge is a recipe for disaster. You have to know your circle and stay within it.
Be honest about whether you're plank or the chauffeur. Got it. Now, what happens when multiple models or forces combine? Munger had a term for that, didn't he? The Lollapalooza effect.
Yes, the Lollapalooza effect. It's when you get two, three, maybe four of these powerful models all pushing in the same direction at the same time.
And it's not just additive, like 2 plus 2 equal 4.
No, that's the key. It's often nonlinear, multiplicative. Munger described it as being like a critical mass in physics where you get a nuclear explosion. The synergy between the forces creates an outcome far bigger than the sum of the parts.
Can you give an example of that kind of explosion?
Think about an open outcry auction, why people wildly overpay sometimes. It's rarely just one reason. It's a Lollapalooza. You've got one, incentive caused bias, the auctioneer wants the highest price. Two, maybe reciprocation, they gave you free drinks. Three, social proof, everyone else is bidding, it must be valuable. Four, scarcity, it's the only one. When all those psychological triggers hit you simultaneously, rationality just evaporates. Boom. Nuclear explosion of irrationality.
That makes so much sense. You get swept up. Okay, let's shift to Munger's critiques of systems, starting with corporate culture and integrity.
Integrity was huge for him. Reputation, he argued, is maybe your single most valuable asset, and it's fragile. He warned about Serpico effects.
Named after the NYPD whistleblower, Frank Serpico. What does that mean in a business context?
It's when unethical or sloppy behavior becomes so normalized within an organization that acting with integrity actually seems strange or disruptive. People start rationalizing cutting corners because everyone does it, and the honest people get pushed out or silenced. That kind of systemic rot, that tolerance for slop, as Munger called it, is incredibly corrosive.
And you mentioned a really stark example from the sources about workers' comp fraud.
Yeah, it's a striking illustration of how much environment matters. Munger told a story about a friend whose manufacturing plants in California and Texas were bleeding money from workers' comp fraud. Costs were like over 10% of payroll, just fraud.
That's unsustainable.
Totally. So the friend moved the entire operation to a town in Utah, predominantly populated by very devout, tightly knit Mormons.
And the result?
The workers' comp expense immediately plummeted to something like 2% of payroll. Same work, same policies on paper, but the cultural environment, the expectation of integrity was completely different. It shows how powerful those soft factors are compared to just rules.
Wow. Environment and incentives trumping everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, Munger wasn't shy about criticizing his own industry, was he? Investment management.
Oh, he was brutal. His assessment was that, taken as a whole, the entire investment management industry provides no value added to all buyers combined.
No value at all on a net basis. Why?
Primarily because of high fees and costs, frictional costs, plus the incentives are often wrong. Managers get paid for assets under management and sometimes for activity, for trading, which encourages churning portfolios rather than doing what's often best for the client, finding great businesses and holding them for the long term.
So his advice boils down to?
Well, his and Buffett's strategy often involved finding those great companies within their circle of competence and then basically sit on your ass. Let compounding work its magic over decades, minimize taxes, avoid those frictional costs. It's simple but not easy. It requires patience, discipline, leveraging multiple models at once.
Okay, so pulling this all together, the lattice work, inversion, psychology, circle of competence, the big takeaway feels less like a financial strategy and more like a life philosophy.
I think that's exactly right. Extraordinary success for Munger wasn't about finding some secret formula or the next hot stock. It was a byproduct of this disciplined, philosophical approach to continuous learning and rational thinking.
And that habit of learning is key.
Absolutely. He constantly pointed out that the people who really succeed aren't always the ones with the highest IQs. They're the learning machines. They make it a habit to go to bed each night, a little wiser than when they woke up. That incremental progress, compounded over a lifetime, that's the powerful force.
It reminds me of his hero, Epictetus, the Stoic. This idea that every setback, every piece of bad luck is actually an opportunity.
An opportunity to behave well, to learn something, to practice virtue. It reframes challenges not as obstacles, but as tests you can use to improve yourself. It gives you agency, even in bad situations.
So if there's one piece of actionable advice to leave our listeners with, drawing from all this Munger wisdom,
I think it's his own summary on how to get ahead and maybe get rich. Spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Discharge your duties faithfully and well. Step by step, you get ahead, but not necessarily in fast spurts. But you build discipline by preparing for fast spurts.
Hmm.
It's about the daily grind of getting better, bit by bit.